What if I told you we could get college football back?
45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the
Yes, that college football. What if I told you regionality could matter again? Rivalries could matter again. And the regular season could matter again. You would take that in a heartbeat, wouldn't you? I know I would. Now, what if I told you all we had to do to achieve that was adopt a little something from our friends across the sea? Ever since 1898, the Brits have been using promotion and relegation as a way to keep their clubs honest and competitive. Being in the top divisions meant you got the biggest slice of the pie, but you had to earn it and then continue earning it year after year after year. See, college football's problem is that certain teams got really lucky way back in the mid-20th century and hitched their wagon to the right horse. They made the right bet. They didn't earn it, though. In fact, they've been the epitome of worthless for most of their conference's existence. Of course, I'm talking about the Vanderbilts and Indianas of the world. A side note, shout out to both of those programs for having awesome 2024s, but we remember every year before that. This not only allows those teams that do not deserve to be in those top conferences to be there, but it limits what great Group of Five programs can do, i.e. the Tulanes and the Boise States. They just don't have the funding and the resources to compete with some of those top teams, but they are better programs. With the last wave of realignment, we saw more Group of Five teams get picked up by the Big 12 as they dealt with the aftermath of Texas and OU jumping ship. But what if that could happen every year? Unfortunately for us, that is not a likely reality. So if we can't have it in reality, why not make it virtually? Why not bring back college football in the way that we, the true diehard college football fans, want it? Now, if you're anything like me, you love the way that regionality used to dominate college football. And you want that to translate to your college football 26 experience. There are a couple of ways to do this, but I find that promotion and relegation is the most fulfilling option. I'm also a very detailed note keeper. I have pages upon pages of spreadsheets with notes and stats from all of my previous dynasties. So essentially, I'm going to show you how to set up your promotion and relegation system within college football, how you can manage it, and how you can make it so that you get the most enjoyment out of your college football 26 experience. Because at the end of the day, that's what we all want. So let me explain how I got to this janky map that I have up on the screen right now. So this is how I divided the college football landscape into, it's not quadrants because there's 5 of them, but 5 sub-regions that would focus on the promotion and relegation within these sub-regions. There are 136 teams now in Division I FBS football, with the additions of Delaware and Missouri State. Fortunately, that gets us to the threshold of 135. That's the number that is super important because it is divisible by 5. You can put 27 teams in each sub-region. One team, obviously, one region is going to have one more team. My fix for this is completely deleting the team. And if you know your college football team locations, you'll notice that one team is missing. I'll give you a quick second to figure out what team that is. Put it in the comments if you know. Okay, your quick second is up. It's Kent State. There is absolutely no reason Kent State needs to be included in this. They are by far the worst team in college football right now, and they're one of the most poorly run football programs over the past 4 or 5 years in the entire sport. They just they don't deserve to be in your promotion and relegation system. So, now that we got that out of the way, we have 135 teams. It made it super easy for me to divide it up. And the way that the college football landscape is, you can do it a couple of different ways. And I've thought about doing it in different ways as well. But to me, this is what made the most sense. Now, the West is super easy. They had the exact right amount of teams. You include UTEP with everybody else, even though UTEP is considered Texas. They just fit so well with New Mexico State and New Mexico that they almost seamlessly fit in with what is going to be called our West region, or our West sub-region, I should say. So this is where we will have the Mountain West Conference as well as The Pac-12. Yes, that's right. The Pac-12 is coming back. And I guess technically now so is the Mountain West, because they will be changing shortly anyway, like everybody else, it seems like. So this is what I was talking about with bringing back regionality. Oregon and Oregon State are going to be in the same conference again. Washington and Washington State are going to be in the same conference again. You will have these regional rivalries. UCLA and Cal will continue to be in the same conference as it should be. Now, this also helps, in real life, limit travel. Obviously, that doesn't matter in the video game world, but you also are able to maintain the regional rivalries of Colorado and Colorado State. And guess what? They might get to play every single year. You might even get opportunities where they are playing for a spot in the upper division, in the Pac-12. Like, this is what I think is so cool about a promotion and relegation system. It keeps everybody honest, but it also gives you those high octane, super, super important matchups that have the most meaning possible. Like, if you wanted elite games that had passion and drive from the teams, this is how you get it, right? So then the way it gets split up on that Western region between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. Now, you can split it up however you want. I thought that most of these were pretty easy. Now, what I did was I made 14 spots available in the Pac-12 or in the upper conferences. So this is across the entire board. The thought process behind that is that once you make it there, it shouldn't be as easy to fall back down, right? Making it there is the thing that everybody wants to do. It should be harder to fall back into the Mountain West. Now, everybody's going to do it every single year. Now you can do this a couple of different ways. And so, like I said, this is the makeup that I have. You have essentially your entire Pac-12 with the addition of Boise State and BYU, because BYU has never been a Pac-12 team. But everybody else is the same. And then the Mountain West is pretty much the Mountain West. Obviously, you take away Boise State, and everybody else is pretty much the same. So there are 13 teams in the Mountain West. There are 14 teams in the Pac-12. You can set it up however you want. The one way that I envisioned is that because you can't take away conference championship games, why don't you have them matter, right? And so you could do it so that every single year, one team drops from that upper conference. So the worst team in that top tier conference falls out. And then that national or that conference championship game in that lower tier conference is for that spot, right? You add maximum value onto that game. Now, if you don't want to do it that way and you want there to be more consistent movement, you can also split up that top division into two divisions. So you have a North and a South or a North and a South division, or a East and a West division, depending on where you are, what region you're in. And then the two losers in those divisions both drop down, and then the two teams that make the conference championship game in the Mountain West would then move up, and you'd reconfigure your divisions. So there are a couple options there. For me, I think that having the one spot on the line, it really places value on giving those teams that earned it during the regular season an opportunity to play for it, making it matter a lot, and just having that importance, right? So as we go back to the jumbled up mess of teams, or at least it looks like a jumbled up mess, we'll transfer ourselves to what I called the Mid-South. And it's that portion in the middle that includes Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Now, you'll notice that it's a pretty clean border of teams. There's 27 there. I had to include Memphis because I needed an extra team, and because they're split off so much from the rest of Tennessee, and it really felt like, adding them into this region made a little bit of sense. I just did it. Now, you could put them in the other, in the Southeast region if you wanted to, but that means you have to sacrifice elsewhere. You're going to have to include another team into that Mid-South region, but you're also going to have to add another team or take away a team from that Southeast region. So however you do that is up to you, but to me, that's what made the most sense. And so as you'll see in that region, you have quite a few interesting matchups. So I decided that Tulane was going to be the representative in the Big 12 over Houston. You can make it Houston if you want. But to me, Tulane is just a better program than Houston is right now. They're in a better spot, and it's kind of funny because Willie Fritz, Tulane's old coach, took the Houston job. That's how I would set it up. It's up to you to change it. You could put Houston in there instead of Tulane. But again, this brings back that regionality. So this is like essentially the Southwest Conference with the addition of LSU and a couple of other teams, Missouri. But you're also bringing back kind of the Big 12. This is what the Big 12 used to look like for the most part. You don't have Colorado, you don't have Nebraska, but you've got Baylor, you've got TCU. You finally, add in SMU, who is one of those private Texas schools that felt like they belonged in the Big 12, but was never invited. And now they're in the Big 12 with your Baylor and your TCUs, right? That's the fun thing about it. You still get the Sunflower Showdown. You still get, your all your big games, Red River. You get all of those games, Bedlam. And so you still have all of that. But then there's that added pressure of, hey, I can't be the worst team, right? I can't go down to Conference USA, because then in the game, how it works, right, is your branding takes a little bit of a hit. Your recruiting hours take a little bit of a hit. Your ability to pitch the conference prestige takes a massive hit. I mean, going from the Big 12, which, because, all the teams are now changed, the Big 12 might be the second best conference after the Southeast Conference, right? It could be. I'm not saying it will be, but it could. And so you go from that to, look at those teams in Conference USA. Like that's a bad conference. Like that is going to hurt going from the Big 12 to the Conference USA. That's going to hurt your recruiting. You're not going to be able to make those same pitches anymore. And so you might even take a hit nationally in contention. So you're gonna feel that, right? Which is why I love this so much, and it keeps you invested, right? So say you're able to bring a team up, and you feel really good about what you were able to do. Well, then you can go to a different team and work on getting them to a point of promotion. And so there are just so many different opportunities here to get those promotion and try and basically build teams back up to get them to the top divisions. You go and look at the SEC next. So this is the Southeast sub-region. And this region is absolutely packed. Outside of Vanderbilt and Mississippi State, and I guess UCF, like all of these teams are legitimate football programs. And I know some people are going to be like, oh, Georgia Tech. Yeah, Georgia Tech's a good football program now. You better learn the name Brent Key. But you have all of those regional rivalries as well. And so Florida State and Florida and Miami are all going to play each other in conference. Those are not going to be out-of-conference games anymore, which is really nice. Same with South Carolina and Clemson. Those are going to be in-conference games because a lot of your rivalries come from regionality, right? Why not make them conference games so we don't have to have an extra out-of-conference game specifically for that? Put onus on that matchup. And you'll see, again, the Sun Belt is not good. These teams do not have the branding. They're not good. That conference is going to be really bad. And so if you fall from the SEC, you're going to take a massive hit. And it's going to have to be something that you try and work around. Even if you have the history of, say, of Florida, but they drop into the Sun Belt Conference, you now take a hit because you're playing against those inferior teams. Now, would it be easier for you to get back up? Yes, but that's a year that you've lost in terms of maximizing your potential because you dropped to that Sun Belt Conference. If we move our way up the East Coast, we'll get to the ACC or the Northeast region. And this one is probably your weakest region in terms of that upper tier division, which is really cool because it allows that lower tier division to really work their way up, right? And have a shot at competing in the ACC fairly quickly. right? So you look at the teams that are in the American Conference, like your Liberties and Army and Navy were really good last year. App State's a really good program as well. Like those teams can get up to the ACC, and like when you look at Wake, when you look at Rutgers, and I put JMU here in the ACC. Again, up to you about where you put teams. The ACC was the one where it kind of felt like there wasn't really a good cutoff, and you had to put one team that wasn't already a Power 5 team in there, and I just settled on them just because I think that consistency-wise, ever since they got to the FBS level, which was only a couple of years ago, they've been a fantastic program. They were one of the premier FCS programs when they were down there. So I just thought that to me made the most sense. Now you could think differently about that and move them down to the American and take a App State up to the ACC, or if you want to do a Navy or an Army or even an ECU, you could do that. And so, you have that. You have all your North Carolina teams, which is another thing I love, right? Every single North Carolina team in this game, App State, ECU, all your Wakes, your UNCs, your Dukes, they're all in the same region. And so theoretically, you could get all of them in the same conference. You could have all 5 North Carolina teams in the same conference. Same with Virginia, right? With ODU and JMU. You already have Virginia Tech and JMU in the same conference. If ODU gets up there, all of a sudden you have all 4 Virginia teams in the same conference. That's pretty freaking cool if you ask me. And then we'll move on to the Midwest region with your Big Ten and your MAC. So this one, again, I felt like the conferences lined up really well, right? The Conference USA is the one where it's a little bit weird. I thought, it doesn't feel like it belongs with the Big 12. But then again, there really weren't any other options, right? And so in the Big Ten, you have your Power 5 schools. There's nothing different about this. The only difference is Notre Dame is no longer an independent in this. Why, if you have all control, why would they be? So they're going to be in here with Ohio State, Michigan, your other teams. But another thing that I think I personally really like about this is that your Kentucky schools get in here. So your Kentucky, your Louisville, your Western Kentucky, they are in this region as well. It adds a little bit of flavor to your matchups, stuff that we're not super used to seeing. But, when you look at the map geographically, I'll show it again, it makes a ton of sense. Like, Kentucky and Cincinnati are not far away at all. And so why not put them in, the same region? Now, they're not in the same conference yet, but they could be, right? And so this allows you to have that flexibility where you're going to be playing new teams often because they're just going to keep switching, right? And you have the potential to move up, whether it's soon, whether it's, it takes you a little bit. There's potential there for you to make the move up, right? That's what we want. We want a dynamic, a fun, and enjoyable experience here in Dynasty. And being at the same program for so many years, playing the same conference teams, having the same end goal every single year, it can become boring, right? You want those different challenges. And listen, you can even go further with this. I once had, and I wish you could add conferences to this, because then it would allow me to get really creative with how I, broke this up and, really separated the teams. But what I would like to do is make it so that there are 3 divisions per region, and you could do that, and it would be a little difficult. But how I would make it work is I would have 10 teams in Tier 1, I'd have 10 teams in Tier 2, and then I would have 7 teams in Tier 3. Now, a way that you could do that, but it's not going to be the cleanest, is that you do that, so you take your top 10 teams, you have them, let's use the Big Ten as an example. You have those 10 teams that you want. So we'll take the top 10 teams from there. We'll take the next next 4 teams, we'll drop them to the MAC, and then we'll take the MAC's top 6 teams. So that way it gives you 10 in the Big Ten, 10 in the MAC. Those leftover 7 teams, you would then put in independent, and then whoever has the best record out of those teams at the end of the year would then be able to move up to the MAC. Now the thing I don't love about this is that those teams aren't going to play each other. Like, there's just no way that they play each other, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a promotion and relegation system. You need to be able to play against those opponents in order for you to earn that promotion or relegation. Now, the scheduling can also make it so that some teams play a heavy FCS schedule just because, they're all these teams are tied up in the division. But what I really like about that is that it allows you to have 9 conference games per conference, and that the winner of the MAC just moves up automatically. You've played your 9 conference games. The winner of the MAC moves up to the Big Ten, swaps places with the lowest team in the Big Ten, and you have that constant dynamic shift. But the reason why I would like to have more levels, obviously, is because it gives you a greater end goal, right? Theoretically speaking, you could go from the MAC to the Big Ten in 1 year, right? I mean, we're look at the teams that you're playing. If you decide that you want to be, Central Michigan, you are already better than, a good amount of the teams in there, and it's not going to be hard for you to beat those teams, right? They're not very good. And so adding that third level, you now have to make it up into the MAC, right? You have to earn your spot in the MAC first before you can then make it to the Big Ten. At minimum, that is 2 years that you have to invest in order to just get to the Big Ten. And then once you get to the Big Ten, it's about winning it, right? And then it's about making the college football playoff. And so this would also allow you to have, 5 spots from 5 conferences in the college football playoff that makes sense, right? Your Power 5 schools would then each get a spot in the college football playoff, and you'd probably work it out so that, the other spots are reserved for those power teams. But you just can't do that in the college football game. It's not going to allow you to keep out those group of 5 teams and those independent. Like, if one of them goes on a 12-0 run, you're just not going to be able to stop them. And so that's how you'd set that up. And I think that would be, that is a super fun and enjoyable experience. I did it once on College Football 25. I took the Ohio Bobcats. I had a 3-tier division, or I had a 3-tier relegation promotion system, and I moved up the ranks. Now, it happened a lot quicker than I thought it was going to. I was a little bit surprised. And part of the reason is because those teams that you play early on are just not very good. And so it can be a little bit easier. But again, for me, it wasn't just about my personal team. It was about the storytelling of the entire league. It was so interesting to see Texas dropped out of the Big 12 in their first season in one of my promotion and relegation leagues. It was mind-boggling. They went 1-11 and dropped out. Now, they were one of the best teams in the country the following year and immediately got promoted again, and I think they made the college football playoff, which is a little bit annoying because I don't think you should be able to make it. Well, I'm digressing at this point. But the point is that it can be, something that it is super engaging with the rest of the league, because I find myself, when I'm focused on my single dynasty, I'm not keeping up with other teams around the league. I'm not focusing on other conference races. With this, I am locked into every single week. I'm going in and checking the conference standings just to see where teams are at and who they play this week and how that's going to affect their ability to either stave off relegation or get promotion, right? Like, those are the different dynamics that you allow yourself to have with a promotion and relegation system in college football 26. Whether or not it's for you, that's for you to decide. I'm just here to set it up for you and basically tell you how to manage it. So, again, I gave you some options in how you want to set it up. I gave you some options in how you promote and relegate teams. If you wanted it, if you have the 14 and the 13, if you want to take 2 teams, from the bottom conference and move them up to the top conference and swap them, you can do that too. Just take the bottom 2 teams, after the year in the conference, take the top 2 teams that are playing in the conference championship game from the bottom tier conference. It's really that simple. But if you can do this with your friends, imagine you and your friends all in, because we now have cross-play Dynasty. Imagine all of you in the same conference, or you guys are in the same region of promotion and relegation, but only one of you gets to move up every single year. How cool would that be, right? And then you get up to the top league, and it's about, okay, how can we not get relegated? That opens the door for a lot of fun possibilities where you know, even if your team's bad, you still have something to play for. It's not just, oh, this season's over. It's, okay, let me not get relegated. Like, I think that this is, you know, especially fun if you do have a cross-play dynasty or an online dynasty with your friends, because it doesn't have to be cross-play. Because it will add so many fun elements and moments. And if you don't want to set it up, you know, in the regionality and the rivalry way, that's totally your prerogative as well. I once set up a promotion and relegation system that literally took, it was like the top 14 teams, and then it was the second, or it was the next 14, and then the third division was 12 teams, and then the fourth division was 12 teams. And I made it so that you literally had to climb your way up the entire system. So it kind of works like the APL, right? Where you start at, you know, you're not considered championship level football, I think is how it works out. And then it's League 2, and then League 1, and then the championship, and then the Premier League. You have to climb so many different levels just to get to the Premier League. I set it up like that, where if you started then again, you'd have to play 10 seasons of college football in order to get promoted all the way up. God forbid you don't get promoted in a single year. You got to play 11. So that could be a little tedious, you know, if you're not looking for something super long term. But for people who are, give yourself that challenge, right? You try and get promoted every single year. And that one, you know, I think you could really do it so that the conference championship game, you know, there's one spot, right? So that way it made you really work for it. You had to earn it. So, you know, there are options here, but I think that promotion and relegation is, because it's such a fun concept, and I don't think we're going to get it in actual college football. I think bringing it to college football 26 is a way to keep your dynasty fun and interesting once you get tired of the same old same, or even before you get tired of the same old same. That way you don't fall into, you know, I played 2-3 seasons and all of a sudden I'm bored of this team, I'm bored of this dynasty, right? Give yourself something to play for. I think it would be so much fun. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Catch you on the flip. See ya.